Hello, everyone. My name is Phil Right-Click Valentine. Um, Phil was my given name, Philip with two L's. Right-Click was my Appalachian Trail name because my right knee clicked going uphill, among other reasons. And I have been in personal recovery from alcoholism, marijuana, and cocaine near the end since December of 1987. So I'm in my 35th year of recovery. I am also the executive director of the Connecticut Community for Addiction Recovery, CCAR for short, and have been with CCAR for 23 years and 19 as executive director. You guys are here for this coaching for coaches, and I have been going around to all our recovery community centers and exploring topics. And you teach best what you most need to learn, right? So I'm always learning and growing and informing my own recovery, which more and more as I venture down this road of recovery, for me personally, it's a journey of self-awareness. And most lately, I've been exploring emotional self-awareness. And Brene Brown, in her book, Atlas of the Heart, kind of really have kickstarted a lot of different thoughts for me about labeling emotion and how powerful that is. And I talk a lot about that. So, because I think it's a quadrant in the white bison theory of our development that we don't talk about much. We'll talk somewhat about the physical, that's what the treatment and medical community likes to do, somewhat about the mental. Um, we dive in our own personal recovery journeys, many of us into the spiritual, but we don't often talk about what the emotional and what our emotions play in that role. So that's kind of what I'm always talking about too. That's just my latest exploration, see where I go with that. But today I'd like you to introduce yourself and
I'm
describe.
trying to figure this out.
Are you John? But you might want to put it on mute.
Yeah, you
Um,
hear a ringtone? Yeah.
I can hear you, John. Yes, I can. Um, and I want to describe a random act of kindness. And here's the little bit of twist. We could probably all identify something we did that was kind for somebody, but I'd like you to describe a random act of kindness that happened to you, that you were the recipient of. Okay. Um, and I'm going to use my participant list. So I want to think, random acts of kindness or maybe just an act of kindness. Uh, Back in March when my parents passed away, I had many of you know the story, but they were divorced 40 years and passed away within 48 hours of each other. And I received a tree from board members that was just such an act of kindness that I was able to plant in the yard, and a, just a really gentle, nice reminder of the gift of life that my parents gave me. So I find that as a really motivating act of kindness. The other thing, I've been venturing into this camping world, and when you go to campgrounds, people are usually very kind. They want to help you. They want to, share tips about setting up an RV, that I'm still pretty new on, all that kind of thing. So I find that as well. So in order for me to make sure I get anybody, I'm going to go down my participant list. I think it's kind of like by um, first name, first initial, but for the first one, I'm going to have introduced is Michael, though, because he's second on my list, Michael Serrano.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michael Serrano. I'm a person in long-term recovery. For me, that means I haven't used a mind-altering substance since October 1st, 2014. I've been with CCAR since 2017, and this is my third position, Facilitated Development Coordinator. I work with most of you guys as facilitators. I'm just eager to learn from you guys about kindness from each
Mhm.
and every one of you, and look forward to hearing from you guys. Also wanted to let you guys know, if you're looking for any type of CECs for this, I just put in, if you don't have a Protrax account, please make sure that you register on that. If any questions, let me know. I'm gonna put my email in there too. With that, I'll pass.
And I have, is it Migdalia Torres? Okay, I can't hear you, Migdalia, so we'll go to Ada. Introduce
Hi.
yourself. Oh, there you go.
Hi, I'm Ada Landry. I'm in long-term recovery. I haven't used any mind or mood altering substances starting on February 20th, 2011. And I guess my act of kindness was I had a recovery who got gifted a case of iced tea. Give me one the other day on a very hot day. And it was extremely welcome.
There you go. Simple. I love it. Anita, how are you? Anita, you're muted. Would you like to introduce yourself in a random act of kindness? Okay. Barry, how about you?
Yeah, my name is Barry Richardson. I'm a person in long-term recovery, and I'm a recovery coach manager for CCAR. And let's see, a random act of kindness. Someone took me to lunch yesterday. They just randomly invited me to lunch and paid for the whole lunch, and I thought that was very nice and unexpected. So thank you.
Thank you. Khalees.
Hey y'all, my name is Khalees. I am a recovery coach, professional and trainer, and I'm also in midterm recovery. Actually, in a couple of months, I'll be in long-term recovery, so that's really interesting. A random act of kindness. I recently delivered an ethics training, and one of the students private messaged me after there was a heated conversation, I guess you could say. And she said, I just want to say thank you for role modeling your professionalism with grace and everything. And she was like, you really showed like what a professional can look like when having a difficult conversation. And like, that just really warmed my heart that she took the time to message me. And I think we receive compliments all the time, but whenever you receive a compliment like that from a student, it was really impactful. Like I screenshotted it and I've like saved it because I was just like, that was so kind.
Well, that's nice, Khalees. Hey, how do you identify long-term recovery?
Well, I was told it's 5 years or more. Am I correct?
Long-term recovery is up to you're in long-term recovery when you say you are.
Well, I'm in long-term recovery, y'all. I'm just gonna say that, okay?
All right, I got
Well,
you.
it's been a long journey, so I feel like I'm allowed to say that I'm in long-term recovery.
Got you. Thank you. Joel.
Hi, everybody. I guess I've been in recovery. It's a bit hard to identify because it's not related to substance, but specifically, it's more related to trauma and to mental health and associated addictions. But that started for me in the late 1990s. Random acts of kindness, I'm going to be a little bit alternative here and talk about more of a Buddhist perspective where they say that even somebody who abuses you is showing you a random act of kindness because through that, you get to understand and grow in your own personal self, in your heart, through forgiveness, etc., etc. But if there are so many other random acts of kindness on the less alternative front, just being here is an act of kindness from you all. So thank you.
Thank you, Joel. Candace.
Good morning. My name is Candace, and like Joel, I'm not in recovery. I'm in recovery from mental illness. And a random act of kindness, a few years ago, someone paid for my groceries. The person behind me paid for my groceries, like my whole grocery order. It was like $150.
Wow. That's a great example. Thank you. Laura.
Hi, everyone. I'm Laura from Georgia, and I'm in recovery. Just past my 15-year mark, recovery from substance use and life. And I've had a lot of random acts of kindness. I feel like I even get those from my cats. Um, but the most recent, or the one that comes up for me, is when I was in line at, XYZ Coffee, and the person ahead of me paid for my order. And it was interesting because I was there picking up something for somebody else to go and share with them as a surprise. So I felt like
Mm,
the universe responded to that.
nice. Matthew.
Hi, my name's Matt. I'm a person in recovery and I'm a recovery coach for a mental health organization in Massachusetts. Um, an act of kindness, what immediately came to my mind was years ago when I was in detox. I had just left like a long-term treatment facility and had gone back to detox at the same facility. And
Mhm.
while I was waiting in the waiting room, one of the guys that I was in the residential with came down and sat with me and gave me some money for the payphone, and that act of kindness always stuck with me.
Wow. Thank you, Matthew. Megan.
Hi, I am Megan. I am in recovery. Live in Southeast Massachusetts, but right now I am in Machias, Maine, which is kind of the middle of nowhere near the Canadian border. And I'm having a very hard time deciding about random acts of kindness because I feel like people are kind on a daily basis. So I'm like, which one do I pick?
Mhm.
But I guess I'll go with the campground piece, Phil, when you said that, because I have a little cabin on a campground here, and people are just incredibly kind. And I was invited to dinner by one of the mission groups that's here, building wheelchair ramps and roofing homes and all of that for people who don't have the means to do it for themselves. And I had dinner with them and it was lovely. And then I did like 3 other things over the next 24 hours that really aggravated them that I didn't, intend to be aggravating. And this morning I saw them on the road and they were just so gracious and kind yet again, even though I was not maybe as kind to them as I could have been.
Nitha.
Hi, I'm Nitha. I'm in recovery. I'm in the UK. We're not melting today. It's a good day. That was a really interesting question because, a bit like Megan, I just started to think of all the people who've been so kind to me and to my family. But I guess the one that sticks out recently is we adopted a little puppy from Romania, and that puppy was in transit when they changed the law so that dog companies couldn't bring the dogs in, only the person who actually was adopting or an appointed person. And one of my friends drove 4 hours from Kent, paid for a ticket on the Eurostar, and went and picked up our puppy. And it was the last one legally allowed in the country. And she got it across the border for us and never asked for a penny back. Yeah, so.
Wow. Thank you. Leda.
Good morning, everyone. My
Morning.
name is Leila, and I'm also a woman in long-term recovery. I've been in recovery since 2017, and I work for TCAR. I work for the program we have, DLC, for the DLC, and I love my job. And some kindness, let me see. Well, yesterday, I was with one of my recoveries, and I always get her coffee, So yesterday she was like, "No, I really appreciate you. So let me please get the coffee for you."
Mhm.
So to me, that meant a lot
Mm.
because he said, "I really appreciate you as a coach."
Mhm.
And
Great.
that's thank you.
Thank you, Leda. Paul.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul. I'm a person in recovery from substance use, mental health challenges, food, all kind of life stuff. I liked how that was put earlier.
Mhm.
Random act of kindness. Well, the most recent thing that came to mind was I had a slow leak on my tire the other day, and I went to one place and they didn't have like the place closest to my house, and they were like hours wait, and then I went to this other place that I normally go to, and I made it there, and then I waited. They fixed my tire, and then when I went to go pay for it, they said, "Oh no, you don't have to pay for it," and I was like, "What? I don't have to pay for it?" And they were like, "Oh no, you bought your tires here, so you get free tires." I was like, "Oh, okay." I wasn't even expecting it. They, do good work, and I've continued going there for a long time, and this will keep me definitely keeping going. So thank you so much.
Well, that's cool. Thank you. Robin. Robin's down with her R and muted, so maybe not. Ryan, I don't know if you're available.
Good morning,
Yeah.
everyone. Good morning, everyone. My name is Ryan Sims. I'm a recovery coach for CCAR, the Jail Diversionary Program. And a random act of kindness. I just purchased my vehicle, and I was driving from my daughter's house, seeing her. I haven't seen her in 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
I'm on the highway, and I'm so elated. I'm so happy to see my daughter. It's been such a long time. My car broke down. It stopped working. I pulled over to the side of the road, and my doors open, and I was clueless of what I was going to do. It just wouldn't start. I didn't have AAA, so on and so forth. And a guy pulled over behind me and came up to me and asked me what was going on with my vehicle. And I showed him the belt tensioner snapped, and the belt snapped. And he drove me to get the part and fixed it on the side of the road. It took him 2 hours, but he fixed my vehicle and didn't want anything for it. Just asked me to pay it forward. And I'll never forget that, ever.
Wow. Oh, thank you, Ryan. Sandra.
Good afternoon. My name is Sandra. I'm in Dublin, Ireland. RCP, first of our kind on the island of Ireland. Yes. I'm afraid Ryan stole my story. I had a similar random act of kindness. I had a blowout on the motorway, and pretty scary that I nearly, totaled myself and the car. My car was a 2006 Fiesta. Just bear that in mind. And the person who pulled in behind me had a 2020 reg BMW. Where I come from, nobody drives BMWs unless they've stolen them or a drug deal.
Oh, wow.
So I was going to a wedding, and he said, "There's the keys in my car. I'll wait for the AA, go to your wedding, and then here's my phone number, and we'll arrange to meet." And he let me drive his car to the wedding so I could marry a couple. So yeah, never been so frightened in all my life driving a car. But there you go. People are good. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, I know you're in a different area when you say a blowout on the motorway. I don't know, what are you talking about? No, just kidding. But it's a apt description. I think Kayla, I see you have just joined us. We're introducing ourselves and a random act of kindness that happened to ourselves. Would you like to introduce yourself? Okay,
Am I unmuted?
you are now. Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay. My name is Kayla Taylor, and a random act of kindness, you said?
That happened to you. Yes.
Off of the top of my head, I can't. It's been one heck of a morning.
That's okay. No problem. We will just continue on.
Thank you.
Yep. Did anybody that I call on that didn't get a chance to introduce themselves and share would they like to?
I think Virginia.
Did I get?
was here, but
I
think
don't
she
see her
left.
anymore. She's
Yeah,
not
she
here
did.
anymore.
Yeah.
Excuse me, can you hear me?
Yeah, hi, Robin. How are you?
Fine, how are you?
Good.
Good. A woman here in long-term recovery of alcohol, some pills, and a few other things.
Mhm.
I just did my recovery coach training, so I in the process of receiving that certificate. And yes, the act of kindness. The other day I was in the grocery store, and a mom and a little girl was ahead of me, and she didn't have enough money, and she didn't want to accept my help, but I offered it, I believe, the right way, appropriately, and she finally did. So and it put a smile on her face.
Mhm.
And of course we had a longer conversation out the door. But yeah, there's the random act of kindness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Who's that over in the WRCC that has their hand raised?
Yeah. Can you hear me, Phil?
I can.
Tommy.
I did.
Kindness. I was at work. I worked in for a plant company, and it was blistering hot, and I was out watering the plants, and a nun came walking by, and she said, "You have such an important job." And I said, "Well, thank you so very much." I said, "And you also have an important job." And she was just tickled pink that I had said that. And it was just so nice of her to acknowledge what I was doing.
Mhm.
And I just thought it was just so sweet of her. And to make her laugh was even, that was cherry on the cake. So I just thought that was a funny situation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody else that didn't get a chance to share or introduce themselves? So I think if you guys put in the chat, you guys know how the chat function works. I'm sure it's not your first Zoom meeting. Just tell people where you're from or where you're doing this from, so we can kind of see where everybody's from. That's just kind of I like to do that just because it's always inspiring to me to see that we're pretty diverse. We're from all over the place. So here's my next question. And again, I'm going to re-emphasize that you teach best what you most need to learn. And so I've gone through this little module at least 4 or 5 times within the recovery community centers. And I say repeatedly that I don't consider myself to be too kind. And at times that has served me well, but I definitely want to work to become more kind. Sometimes my sense of humor and my observation gets in the way of being kind, or it's not perceived as kindness anyway. How do you define kindness? And you can raise your virtual hand. You can raise your hand on screen. I kind of want to do this, see if we can do it with, instead of breaking out, if we can do it in a group of 20. But how do you, when you all described an act of kindness, how do you define kindness? So that's Tommy in the WRCC. How do you define kindness? And you're muted right now. There you go.
Yeah, I define kindness as thinking outside of myself. When I was active in my addictions and stuff, I was a very selfish person, and very self-centered. And being in long-term sobriety, being surrounded by the amazing people that I've surrounded myself with, I've learned, the wonderfulness of, looking past myself and outside of myself to give back to others that are maybe not as fortunate as me or as in the best situation, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever the case may be, but just to, give back is, I think, a privilege, to help somebody, lift somebody up. No matter if it's as simple as have a nice day,
Mm-hmm.
that could be the complete difference in someone's day, because you don't know what that person is going through. They could be going through something tragic, or they could be they could be completely fine. But who am I to know? So what's the hurt in saying those simple little words?
Gotcha.
It doesn't take much.
Thank you, Tommy.
You're welcome.
Sandra, how do you define kindness?
Yeah, for me, it's whether it's me being kind to someone or someone being kind to me, it's doing something purely because I can, not because there's any skin in the game for me or there's a benefit to me, but I do it just purely because it helps somebody else out. And I just know that when that's done for me, that is the greatest kindness anybody could show me, because it means I'm not obligated to them, but I'm still the recipient of something beneficial that I will then pass on in a different way. But yeah, no skin in the game and doing it purely because you can and it's in your gift to do so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Orion. Orion, you're muted. Are you coming on for us? Thank you.
I am. You're welcome. I describe kindness as nothing but love, with nothing attached to that. Pure love. That's how I
Got you. Khalees.
I was gonna say love as well, but I kind of think it feels mundane, like normal, like casual. Like I'd mentioned to my son yesterday, I was outside doing something and he walked outside and he was just like, "Hey mom, I love you." And I was just like, Parker, I love that. Like whenever it just seems so normal, so nonchalant, we're just in our day-to-day activities and it's easy. And then it gives you that like warm feeling inside, like, oh, like you recognize it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Is kindness mundane?
I think whenever kindness is genuine, it comes off as mundane.
Okay. Well, I can buy that.
Maybe.
Good.
Yeah.
So what is kindness? What is it? You all received it. What is it? Why does it affect you? What is it? Nitha?
I think for me, in my situation, it was definitely unplanned. It was unexpected. It was just done purely without, like Sandra said, unconditional, nothing there. And I think it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, and Megan put in the chat an act of love. So okay. Laura.
I think I would like to describe it as, I like what Nitha just said. I mean, it definitely can be either spontaneous or intentional. I mean, I think the person in front of me at the coffee shop is definitely working on intention there, but it's an act of generosity and consideration for the other, if you will, without thought of self or anything in return.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Ada.
It comes from empathy.
Okay. Do you want to expand on that at all?
Understanding where you are, what's going on with you, whether it was like the car, whether it's like the iced tea. It's understanding what is going on for the other person and doing something to help them deal with.
Okay, thank you. Matt.
There we go. I loved a lot of the other definitions, like an act of love or caring and to give without condition. I think those are all like part of how I would define that, but also I think it's connection. You know, it's connection to another person.
Love it. Yeah, thank you, Matt. Miss Megan.
Yeah, it's just making me think, listening to everybody, it's making me think about grace
Mm,
and sort of that idea that it doesn't matter if someone deserves something. Like that's not, like, kindness just comes from a genuine desire to be loving and caring to others, regardless of who they are, and not, there's just no thought of me of whether, you know, they should have this or they deserve to have this, or, you know, I should be kind because of this. It's just this way of loving everybody
hmm
with no, you know, just regardless, and wanting to show them love, because I love to be loved and shown that I'm loved. And I love to love others and show them that I love them, even if it's the most random person. I just want people to feel loved. So I guess it's yeah, giving love freely without worrying about it being deserved.
Yeah, thank you. So I see 44791, and I think I know your name, but I can't remember what it is for sure.
Michael,
Yeah, hi, Michael.
how did it do that? Oh, it's got my prison number on.
Well, that's cool too. I love that.
Not really.
I do.
I've noticed. I obviously came into this like just a few minutes ago. I've noticed everyone's talking about the other person, but over the last few weeks, I've got into watching lots of YouTube videos of people rescuing animals, particularly one woman in the Ukraine, and she's finding lots of abandoned animals, and she's gone in with kindness in her heart, and she's rescuing these animals, feeding them, or finding somewhere else for them to live. So it doesn't have to be another person. It's what comes from your own heart.
Mm. Thank you. So here's another question. You can raise, you can put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand and talk about it. What are attributes of a kind person? Think of a kind person you know in your life, maybe you, but what are some attributes of a kind person? What do they do?
I have problems with the idea of a kind person.
Okay.
I think everybody has kindness within them, and a lot of the people I've worked with over the years have their sort of stigmatized, excluded people, but I see them carrying out acts of, or performing acts of kindness with their fellow addicts, homeless people, even though they're in a really poor position themselves. I've seen people sharing, even though they haven't got much. So I think everybody has kindness.
Okay.
And unless perhaps they're not psychopaths, what sociopaths? Maybe sociopaths don't.
All right. What are somebody else? What are some attributes of kind people? And we can see in the chat that some people are talking about grace, generosity, loving, non-judgmental, open-minded, joyful, positive. They listen, usually happy, supportive and respectful. They're present, generous, attentive listeners. What are they doing though? What are the attributes of these people? Joel.
Hey, Phil. I'm going to slightly go back to what I was saying earlier on, that, you know, sometimes a person isn't meaning to be kind, and actually they're not meaning anything. They're just behaving in a way that might be a little bit cruel or a little bit mean. But I take it as a kindness because if something forces me to get out of my cocoon and to get out of my comfort place and to grow, then I take that as an act of kindness, as a totally random one. So for me, the definition isn't so much that the attribute is in the other person, it's in what it does for me. When I was younger, some of the traumas that I experienced within my family, I take that now, years and years later, as acts of kindness, maybe by the universe or by God, but not necessarily by my family per se, because they weren't trying to do that, if you know what I mean. So I'm just looking at it in a slightly different perspective.
Interesting perspective. Um, so you're even saying that what other people would view as like a harmful act might actually be an act of kindness?
Yeah, because I just would not have grown and matured if it weren't for
Right.
the toughness, and some of that toughness was not put out in a kind, so-called kind way. But for me, it is forced growth. So I take it as a kindness from the universe or from God, however you want to describe that.
Okay. Nitha.
I think for me, what it sometimes comes down to is just time. The fact that somebody has taken a moment out of their day to think about me and send me a message, or to make some space to have a conversation with me and, you know, help me grow, get clarity, just, yeah, let me just even vent if there's family stuff going on that's an, unbiased person. Just kindness comes in so many ways now, and I'm just grateful I can see that.
Megan.
Yeah, this is, I don't think, an original thought, but a further articulation on what everyone else is offering. I love that idea of being present and seeing people. I think kindness requires that we actually see people and connect with them like human to human. I think about, like, my mom sort of taught me this, like, everywhere she goes, she speaks to everybody. She speaks to people in the grocery line. She talks to every person who is being of service to her in whatever job they have. Like, she just acknowledges and speaks directly to people all the time. And I think, like, in coaching, I think one of the most powerful things we do is when we sit with somebody and we really are genuinely curious and we really listen and we really pay attention. And that could be the first time somebody feels seen in a really long time. So I think kindness, the first thing before we can be kind is for us to just see a person. And we spend a lot of time not seeing people in our day-to-day lives.
Thank you, Megan. Barry.
Yeah, I think attributes of being kind are a grateful person and a selfless person. Person is not really so caught up on to always taking and always receiving, and are willing, open enough to be able to give and share.
Thank you, Barry. Paul.
Somebody said it earlier. I think somebody who is kind wants to be kind, and it just comes natural to them. They're not thinking about outcomes. That's just the way they are. And then when you asked about what are they doing, they're working on their own wellness, right? And something that I want to do, and a way that I want to be towards others. And then it made me think also, back to William White's article, Recovery Carriers. That's what they're doing. They're carrying recovery.
I think for me, when I think about kindness, right, the first word that comes to my mind is gentle. And I don't know why, but that's just the way I'm wired to think about it. Because I don't think gentle is my go-to nature a lot of times. However, I think about when I come across someone that's suffering, or somebody that's hurt physically, or I think of, like, mom and dad in their last days. I was gentle, just came out of me, and it triggered something for me, that this person was really vulnerable, And when people are vulnerable, that's when my kindness kicks in. That's when I become gentle. I don't know that everybody feels that way, or when they see vulnerability. I mean, for me to be vulnerable, I'll be vulnerable right now, is like, Sandy, like when my kids got hurt doing something, like I would get angry at first. And I didn't know why I got angry because my kid got hurt. But then I realized that one of the first lessons I learned in recovery was that anger was the face of fear. And it was very hard for me to identify that I was afraid for my kids. So it kind of surfaced as anger. And it took a whole process for me to switch from like this anger mode to like Sandy's response was like, oh my gosh, my kid's hurt, and go wrap them up and take care and do whatever and tend to the bleeding and all that kind of stuff or whatever it may be. So I've evolved that now I see the pain and I respond differently because the two hardest things for me to identify, and this is just me personally, is that I'm hurt, like emotionally hurt, very hard for me to identify or to admit, and B, that I'm afraid. And so, even after 30 plus years of recovery, just really starting to really dive into some of those things about myself, and through doing this process about why can't I be more kind? Because I haven't been able to label everything that's going on inside me yet. I've become way more self-aware than I've ever been, but there's still a lot more self-awareness to understand. So, yeah. Anybody have any thoughts about what I just shared or anything? Yeah, Joel.
Hey, thanks for that, Phil.
Mhm.
But if you say that it's rooted in some sort of gentleness, how do you explain tough love? I mean, we've all experienced tough love. We've all had to give tough love, where gentleness is less so. It's more fierce. It's more having to do the right thing, even though it hurts you to do that thing for the other person, and vice versa.
Um, yeah, I guess we could have a whole conversation about that. But tough love, the way I've come to understand it, um, and actually my daughter's trail name when she hiked the trail with me was Tough Love because she kind of yelled at me about one thing. Um, I think tough love is in a response to fit where gentleness, kindness, reasoning didn't work or didn't get a result that you were hoping for. So tough love kind of comes as I don't think I lead with tough love unless it was really like the art of recovery coaching. Something was really in tune that this was going to be something I needed to do. Um, so, but I would lead with kindness usually. So,
But
yeah.
but the whole point is that kindness is expressed through tough love. Like, when somebody has to grasp on their own family in order to get them to take responsibility for their actions. I mean, those things can be extreme acts of kindness because the person doesn't want to do it. It hurts them to do it to a family member, but they know ultimately it's the best thing for their loved one to be tough with them. It doesn't necessarily come through gentleness, but it's still the most kind thing that is available in that moment.
Well, I don't know if I don't, and we might be just talking about semantics. Like I'm not disagreeing with the approach, but I don't know if I would label tough love as kind. But that's me personally, right? I'd say because if you remember the old Nick Lowe song in 1978, "Cruel to be kind." So, there's a whole message in there too, but I'm not quite sure what that is, but now it's in everybody's head. I know Megan's singing it. Um, Michael, what do you have to say about this?
Oh, thinking back to my upbringing as a child,
Mm-hmm.
I would say that I experienced lots of tough love, although I'm not sure if exactly that is how Joel means it. And it messed me up big time. And it was only through probably like in my late 20s when I trained as a youth worker and began to study child development, and then went through a few years of psychotherapy, that I realized that it wasn't tough love, it was abuse. And it really, really messed me up. It's something I've dealt with along the way. But I would say that I've reached my stage of development now, not because of the tough love, but despite the tough love, and with acts of kindness that I began to experience in my early 20s, mid 20s, that helped me to realize that the tough love was abuse.
Gotcha.
To begin healing myself.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Michael. Laura.
Yeah. So first of all, cruel to be kind in the right measure.
Right.
In the right measure.
Important to
Oh,
remember.
no.
Equal parts here. And I want to get back to what you were saying, Phil, about the gentleness, because I just really resonate with that. And, I can see my life in many respects as not like I was not gentle then and I'm gentle now, but it's been this gradual, beautiful evolution of increased gentleness. And I find that that is just a really huge strength for human beings who can kind of harness that gentleness and act upon it. But also, with the tough love, I mean, there's equal strength in that. But it's, I think too, for me, when you talked about like emotional self-discovery, I just find this huge connection here, because I don't know if anybody's interested or knowledgeable about the Enneagram here, but I'm a 4 on the Enneagram, and we tend to be really tied into our emotions and et cetera. I know that about me all my life. So I've been exploring that, for 50 plus years, but it wasn't until these past 15 that I explored it in a way that kind of helped me to get out of myself and to be able to connect with what I'm feeling and understand what I'm feeling and understand why I'm feeling what I'm feeling, and use that really to connect with other people. Because I think somebody mentioned it earlier about empathy. I think that's tied in there, because when I am able to say, oh, okay, this is what I'm feeling and this is why for me, it opens me up to be present with those other people, because I don't know what they're feeling. I don't know what they're going through. But if I come from a place of gentleness, then I can really connect with them on a deeper level. I don't have to know what's going on with them, but I know that they're a human being and they're standing in front of me. And that means I'm going to be gentle with them, most likely. But more than anything, I'm going to be present with them and try to work with them to get them to open up or help me to serve them in some way. I just wanted to offer that.
Yeah, thank you. You see me turning around a lot. I'm just my book is over here, so I'm just continually writing notes. So thank you. You're helping me so much. Joel.
Yeah, sorry to keep harping on this, but I mean,
It's
when
fine.
you guys have had social protests in your country, for example, people who have to be assertive and to protest against injustices, those are acts of kindness against for large groups of people against an oppressive environment. I don't see how you can be gentle in order to be kind in those cases, right? It's coming from a place of love, it's coming from a place of kindness, but it's totally assertive, not gentle.
Well, I would say it's probably more of an act of anger at the injustice. So I don't know that it's always that people that are protesting are feeling kind at the moment or consider it an act of kindness. Maybe in the long term it might be, but I think it's more a frustration and a sense of injustice. That's my
We'll,
opinion.
we'll, we'll have to agree to disagree, because I come from a place of non-assertiveness.
Mm-hmm.
As a man, as a male, I come from a place of non-assertiveness, and
Mm-hmm.
gentleness has always been my default. So I've had to learn how to become more assertive. I've had to learn how to wield that power in order to express kindness in a more balanced way. So
Love it.
I would argue that a person who comes from a more assertive background has to learn how to become gentle, the yin and the yang of kindness. And maybe that's the difference between you and me.
And that's fine. I'm perfectly okay with that. Thank you, Joel. Appreciate you jumping on. Continue to do so. I saw somebody else. Matt, you had your hand up, didn't you? I saw you. You can't get away that easily.
I was thinking about, this, for me, I think, like if I'm thinking about tough love and the times that maybe I've given tough love to people, there's almost like the expectation that they are going to do what I want them to do. And it's almost like, for me, I feel like it's forceful. If I'm giving somebody tough love, I'm expecting that they do what I think they should do. And I think that, like, when I think about that, it's putting that expectation on it is what makes it the difference between, kindness and something else for me.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So let's kind of bring this in. This is a coaching for coaches session. So one of the big questions is, how does kindness tie into recovery coaching? Megan hinted on it earlier when she was talking about it. But how does kindness tie into recovery coaching?
I think it's sorry.
No, go ahead. No, you're good. Thank
I
you.
think it's absolutely fundamental to the role. I think that we cannot do our job as a coach without having kindness towards those that we're working with. I just think how else can we, it's just fundamental to the model, to the way that we see people and connect with people. It's human to human, and that in itself is kindness, just being present with another human.
Unless you're in it for the money, which is not,
well,
which is not very likely. No,
I was gonna say you're in the wrong job then.
Yeah,
yeah.
I would have said the same as you, Megan. Absolutely. Without kindness, we can't do our job. I don't consider myself a kind person. I can be really selfish and a pain in the arse sometimes, but I am able to bring kindness into my role at work because I couldn't do it without it. But it's that simple.
Thanks, Michael. Ryan, you have your hand up.
Yes, I think that kindness, how that ties into the role of being a coach, is that kindness is a form of healing, in my opinion, and it's a form of trust.
Mm-hmm.
Many of the people that I work with, kindness is foreign to them.
Let me ask you a question. Now you're like 6'12" and about 400 pounds. And
Yes.
do people like think that how does kindness work? I know you to be kind, but you must get different responses when people meet you for the first time.
I do. I've gotten a lot of responses from people of that I'm scary, or I look like or that I'd hurt somebody. And then when I open my mouth and start sharing that love and kindness with them, it blows them away. It just blows them away. It's amazing when I'm in a grocery store, and I have tattoos and I'm 6'7" and I'm 400 pounds and I don't always smile. I'm smiling on the inside. But when somebody asks me to reach for something on a level that they can't reach, and I say absolutely, and I give it to them, and I say have a wonderful day, and it surprises them, it shocks them. So I enjoy it. I enjoy it immensely, and kindness is what is the main ingredient in my life as a coach.
Mhm. Thank you, Ryan. Appreciate you too.
You're welcome.
And now we'll hear from the peacemaker.
So kindness is, I'm like this is like really deep for me, because I grew up with a lot of people with dark hearts, right? They did things spitefully. There was this kid that I grew up with that he used to always say, I got this black cloud and I'm looking for somebody to pass my black cloud to. And I always look at it like, me personally, I'm like, my daughter was telling me this. She goes, Dad, I see a lot of people, they get along with you and you could talk to everybody, and it's just like, you're so approachable. And it's just, to me, it's just, that's me and my nature, right? But I always say, as a recovery coach, imagine if I wasn't kind. How many people can I coach? How many people will approach me, and how many people will come back to me? Because I can have a conversation with somebody and then they realize, like, this guy's not kind, this guy's not genuine, and he has no interest in helping me out. So what is likely for that person to return to me for some help? But if you stay kind and you do, and you wear it, right? You wear it outside of you, just don't keep it inside of you. You show it. You're so approachable, and just people they won't hesitate to give you a call. They won't hesitate to ask you for anything if you show that out. So I like this because not everybody can be a coach, and that's the realistic part, right? But kindness, it takes a long way. Like Layla was saying earlier, she said that she was buying coffee for somebody, and then all of a sudden it came to the person to be like, let me buy you a coffee, because Layla was being kind to that person, and that person wanted to show. So kindness is contagious if you do it the right way.
There's a lot there. Thank you, Michael. Anybody else? Nitha, you talked about kindness at all?
I think now kind of every day I wake up and I can have a new demand or a new question or and to me, it's like, I just want to face everything with kindness. I think a bit like Michael said, if I am not kind to people, if I'm not willing to have that conversation with somebody, share something, versus keeping it all to myself, that's not good. And that doesn't fill my heart with joy. It doesn't fill me with integrity, and it doesn't make me approachable, and if we want to help people, then I think we have to be approachable. And if we're kind, we become more approachable. And I think one thing I've learned from Phil is just do the right thing. If in doubt, just do the next right thing. And if I don't know what the next right thing is, then the next right thing is to be kind, see what
Thank
happens
you.
and follow it through. Yeah.
Barry.
Yeah, I think it's definitely necessary to be kind to be a recovery coach. I think generosity and kindness is attractive, right? And in order for someone to respond to you, they need to be somewhat attractive to what you're offering them. And if you're not kind, I mean, if someone approaches you in a negative way, most likely they're going to respond in a negative way. If you approach them in a positive, kind way, then you have a chance, opportunity for them to react and respond in that way to you. I think it's pretty much impossible, especially in the recovery, to be, to approach someone and expect them to respond and be negative or be selfish or be, just all the things that are opposite of kindness. I kind of like what the guy was saying about the tough love is a kind act. It took me a minute to kind of understand what he was saying, but sometimes what I related that to is sometimes you give a person what they need, not what they want, and that was the way I could understand. That was the way I understood. So I want to thank you for that. Thank you.
Yeah. Barry, I got a question for you. Don't go away. You know, I got a question for you. Do you consider yourself a kind person?
Yes.
Good. I do too. Thanks. That was it. Khalees.
I was just gonna say, like, based on, you know, this has been a really good conversation, but when it comes to recovery coaching and kindness, I do think that's fundamental, because even whenever Megan was saying in the chat, like the first interaction, like that's the first thing, one of the first attributes people can feel, I completely agree with that, because whenever I think about situations, even whenever I worked at a drug service once, you know, like some people might get angry, but whenever you go and you're like, hey, like, let me, you know, you're kind, that makes them feel safe. That makes them feel like they can open up to you. They start to trust you. And, you know, we might be the first person that's ever been kind to somebody. And I think that it's really important for us to remember that, because I know how I felt whenever y'all, you know, some of y'all heard me talk about that lawyer that sat down and talked to me. That was the first person who ever worked in criminal justice settings or anything like that, that treated me like a human, like I wasn't a number. And that made all the difference. So I know what that feels like. And I just think that's so important. So that first interaction can make or break a coaching relationship.
So how can we practice becoming more kind? What are some tools, some thoughts, some considerations? How can we become more kind? Megan.
I'm very enthusiastic about this subject, as you might have noticed.
Good.
The absolute first thing that came to my mind is being kind to myself. Like I have to feel love just in general, I think, to be more kind to others. So I think, like, I have to be having my cup filled, and my sort of, it's when I'm grumpy or tired or you know, overwhelmed or whatever, that I'm much less kind. So I think for me, in order to have that generosity of love, I have to be filled with love, and that starts with me. So I have to be kind to myself, which is so much harder.
Well, then how do you fill yourself with love? I mean, that's a big deal.
You don't seriously want to answer that now, do you? I mean, it's, you know, it's doing things for myself that make me, that I would, it's the same things that I would do for others. Like, it's easy for me to think of things I would do to be kind to others, right? But it's, you know, treating my body well, doing things that I love, allowing people to love me, which was a very steep and long learning curve for me. But, you know, like, I have to receive love from others, as well as show myself love by having good boundaries with work, by having good boundaries with people in my life, with making myself a priority, with just good care for myself, and feeding the part of me that my, like, where it comes from inside of me. So for me, it's nature, it's wonder, being, you know, in awe of nature or in awe of other people's amazingness. I think it's hard to kind of articulate.
Thank you. Joel.
Thanks, Phil. I think there's a relationship between kindness and, like, being open-minded. So one of the things that I would try to do is just identify my own biases, you know, and judgments, and try to open those out by empathizing with people and trying to understand people better from different backgrounds. I can't be kind to a person really specifically if I don't understand their needs and their wants. I mean, I can show a random act of kindness by buying a cup of coffee, but that's quite a superficial thing. So if I wanted to get a bit deeper with it, I would really have to, like, open my heart and mind to what that person's really about and what their experience has been. And through that, I can be more kind at a deeper level. But that requires empathy and, like, taking the time to actually listen to them.
Love it. Thank you. Barry. You're on the phone? All right, I'll get back to you, but your hand's raised, so I'll get back to you. Yeah, Paul.
It's just making me think it's such a practice. It's something we practice. That I would, in hearing, I definitely need to practice more being kind to myself, more so. But sometimes just like the little things, no matter where I am, if I see somebody like, sweeping or cleaning up, I always acknowledge like, oh, thank you for making
Me
it
too.
nice. I would just something little like that, just really sometimes, you see people totally brighten up and it, it makes you feel good as well, because just this one little acknowledgement, so definitely a practice.
Mhm. How do we practice kindness? How do we become more kind if that's what we're seeking to do? I think about that. I too I'll talk to lots of different people. I practice doing that because I think believe it or not, I'm naturally introverted. So sometimes to be kind, you have to dive into the extrovert part. And sometimes it takes a little courage to be kind. It doesn't, it just to acknowledge somebody, to do something. You see somebody needs help. You have to become, for me, I have to become less selfish and more selfless in wanting to help somebody through something. But I think when we're talking about recovery coaching, people often make themselves vulnerable just by asking for some type of help, asking for coaching. So they've given me a gift in that space. And I want to be kind and I want to be gentle with the gift that they've held to me. That's part of them. So I have to be gentle with that. I have to be kind with that. Barry, you're off the phone. How do you practice being kind?
I think, being in recovery, I think, my connection with God helped me a lot with kindness, because of my connection with God and gave me the ability to start to heal myself, right? And it took a lot of that animosity and the anger and the selfishness. It became unnecessary.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And when I'm okay, when I get up and I meditate and I pray and I get connected to the something positive, when I get connected to that, then it's real easy to be kind. You know what I mean? And I think when I start practicing that daily, because of the amount of peace I have, that gives me the ability to be kind. I would like other people to have it too. So, and whatever I can do as a coach or as a person to help somebody else get there, and my connection with God tells me that I should be able to do that. So I do my best with that.
I have somebody sitting right down here in front of me, asleep. My dog. My dog is always kind, and he drives me crazy because he's always kind. Whether I'm irritated or come in or whatever, he's just kind. He's gentle, he's loving. I mean, I need to be more like my dog.
He'd make a lousy recovery coach.
Well, I don't know. He's pretty. He gets people talking all the time, so he might be okay. I don't know. It's pretty. He would.
Unconditional love.
Yeah, unconditional love. There's a lot of that. I think, and here are some key messages, and I'll just share what I've noted as I designed or worked on this module or whatever this is and talked to many people across in Connecticut. But kindness is the go-to action step. I think you guys might have Megan said like kindness is almost fundamental to recovery coaching. So think about that, when you're in that, and I also think it's fundamental to relationships, right? That if you want to build relationships, it's not just coaching relationships. I think about, you know, like Sandy was up earlier than me. She took care of the dog and she let me know. And I just said, thank you. And I might not have often said thank you, but that's me practicing being kind with the people that are closest to me, that you don't take that for granted. How many people have heard in recovery, when in doubt about what to do next, do the next right thing? And a lot of people, when I say that, say, I don't always know what the right thing is. You know, well, what's the right thing? I get stuck. Well, my sponsor taught me many, many years ago about when in doubt about what to do next, do the next kind thing. And he replaced right with kind, because that's almost easier to pick out sometimes than right. It might be kind. We talked about a little bit, in order to be kind, you may need to be courageous as well. It's sometimes when we see something that's difficult, we turn from it instead of like, that's not my problem. I don't want to deal with that. You know, I don't want to respond. I'll avoid it, you know, flight or fear, you know, or being inconvenienced, and you don't want to be inconvenienced at that time. So that ties into the last part. And I think this goes into a little bit what Joel was talking about too, an unwillingness to confront, an unwillingness to confront is not kindness. So sometimes you have to be willing to confront. That may be difficult, that may be tough love, it might be even assertive, but it might be the kind thing to do as well. So any thoughts about what I just shared about kindness and recovery coaching, some of the key points? Anything that you'd like to share? Laura?
Yeah.
Thanks.
You're welcome. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I think for me, the practice is about dropping judgment, making sure that the heart is the one leading the way. And for me, it is about being assertive. Assertive is not a dirty word. I mean, it's right in the, it's the middle ground between being passive and being aggressive. I want to be an earth mover. I want to till up the soil in my assertions. And I can do that in a very gentle way. I can also do that in a very tough love kind of way. And so finding what that assertive communication is, or finding what that assertive action may be with this person in front of me, is my way through to serving that person. So I think it is intrinsically connected, kindness and recovery coaching, definitely. Thanks.
Thank you. Megan?
Yeah, I mean, I think Laura just said it far more beautifully than I'm going to try to say it. I'm a very direct person, but I think that directness is part of my kindness. So I think like there's like a more nuanced level of kindness that is what you're talking about, Phil, and what Laura was just talking about, where it is often kind to set a boundary, or tell a hard truth, or you know, act in a way that someone may not like, or maybe feel hard to me, but is still an act of loving kindness. And I think that those are the harder ones to do. And like I said, I tend to be direct. It's taken me a long time to develop the art of being direct in a loving way. And I still have plenty of work to do there. But I think in coaching, we absolutely have to be able to do all of our roles with kindness, and that can be really challenging. And I think it's really challenging with, you know, family members and people that you're close to, and that as well as finding ways to do things that they are not going to like, but to still feel like I'm doing it in the most loving way possible.
I see, Khalees, you just said that Megan once said, always tell the truth with love. Art Woodard was always famous for saying, tell the truth without blame or judgment, and which he, I think, got from Angelus Arian. But I've heard that a lot too. But Khalees, you mentioned something about reflection and looking back. Talk to us a little bit about that in the chat.
So in the chat, and then I just started talking. Never mind. Let me just pause.
Why are you pausing?
Oh, you wanted me to speak out. Sorry, I thought you said speak about it in the chat.
No, you did speak about it in the chat. You wrote it, so I wanted you to talk a little bit more about it.
So we had a guy, he's amazing, he's part of our recovery coaching community, and he used to do these reflective practice groups, and it's over, I can't remember what it was, but that was like a huge growing for me, because the way it's broken down, you just complete like a worksheet. But whenever I started to do that, not only do I look at myself in that situation, but I look at the other parties that were involved in everything. And then it was kind of like, what could I have done better? And whenever I started to really do those reflective practices, they helped me in my personal and professional growth, and really looking at that. And then I guess from doing that act of sitting down and completing that whole exercise. And I mean, my mom says, please, you take like 2 hours to do a reflective practice, because I just like, I can sit there and I ponder everything and I really break it down and stuff. But it just really helped me to not only deal with situations whenever I might get annoyed or agitated or overwhelmed, but I don't know, it just made me start to really develop empathy for people. I mean, not that I wasn't empathetic already, but it started making me have more empathy. And I like to give a really good example of, one guy was making me really frustrated, but then whenever I did that reflective practice, I then was like, maybe he's never been heard before. Maybe he's never been given the opportunity to speak, or maybe he doesn't have coaches like I do, or people that wrap around and support him and guide him. So by doing that reflective practice, I ended up having a lot of empathy and compassion for him, and then wanting to support him more. At first where I was frustrated and angry, like, I then left that situation being like, wow, how can I help him? How can I help him with his confidence? And I could see a lot of myself in him at that time too, where now, yeah. So that's kind of it. Really good.
Sandra, what's the role of, are people kind in Ireland?
Oh God. I mean, we were once dubbed the friendliest country in the world, and I'm sure that's still true on many levels. I think we are, and I think it comes from our history, and it comes from a place of not having a place or being displaced, and that kind of grows. We grow up with that, and it's kind of in our DNA, But I think our kindness comes through the crack. Now, I'm not talking about drugs. The crack over here in Ireland is fun, We will demonstrate kindness in that banter, interaction kind of way. So if somebody's buying you a cup of coffee, like it's a joke almost, like that man who gave me his car. He was kind of going, I've always wanted a vintage car, Well, you got a 2006 Fiesta, love, off you go. with a tire that's blew out, like, so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I think Irish people in the main are more friendly, and I think our friendliness is the people will call us kind because we're friendly.
Is there a difference?
I think maybe they're two sides of the same coin. In certain circumstances. I mean the phrase tough love, I understand what it means, but I like calling things what I like to call them, and for me it's like, if I'm saying something that the other person may find difficult to hear, to me that's telling the truth as I see it. I can't call it tough love because I'm not tough, and although there's a lot of people in Ireland would disagree with that, but I know I'm not tough, and I may not necessarily be coming from a loving place when I'm like that. So I think friendliness to me, it's like that open stance, isn't it? It's like that you know, I'm open. You don't have to be guarded around me. And if I can help you, I will. And I'll help you because I can, not because
Mhm.
there's anything in it from me. So they go hand in hand, but not always. But I think it certainly pushes it a long way.
Thank you so much for that. Um, I'd like to do away with the term tough love. I gotcha. Um, anyway, anybody have any closing thoughts? Again, I have many notes written in my book and we'll make adaptations to this little piece. Any thoughts, comments, epiphanies, anything, final comments that you'd like to share with me or the group? All right. Well, thank you so much. That's a wrap. Thank you for your attendance and your conversation. I thoroughly appreciated it and enjoyed it. Take care, everybody. Many blessings.